Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of New Vida Let's Talk. Today, we're honored to have Taylor and Jeremy from TayJay Real Estate with us here today. Honestly, I look up to these two. If it wasn't for them, I don't think I would be in the real estate game, and that's just very transparent. But not only that, these two they're really big on giving back to their community, whether that be through events, whether that be through education, or whether that be donating to charities that are local. They're just incredible people. So thank you so much, guys, for coming on. And if you guys want to give a brief introduction about yourselves, like who you are and what do you do in your business?
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. You want to go ahead? Awesome. Okay. I'm Jeremy from TayJay Real Estate. We've been doing real estate for about 3 years now. We've done about 50 deals, whether that, all buying and selling. We primarily focus in the Chatham Kent real estate market and mainly focus on buying anything between single family to 12-unit apartment buildings. And we focus on using the BRRRR strategy. So that's basically taking buildings that are kind of run down or in need of repair. We go in, we turn those buildings over, and then once we're done with that, bring them back to the bank and continue doing that process or continue building up those buildings. And
Yeah, that's a good explanation.
Okay, cool. I guess let's kind of bring it back, I guess, right? Like to like the early days, like maybe high school days. You can start with like Taylor first, then maybe Jeremy. Just kind of like your roadmap, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So Jeremy and I met when we were like 16, 17. So we met pretty young. Actually at a campground where Jeremy's parents now live. So we ended up dating. Trying to think what next. Jeremy ended up going out west, and both of us were like kind of in school doing our own thing, saving up our money. And then when you came back from out west, your parents had left town and had nowhere to live, so I actually lived like with my family for 2 years. So we lived together and had an opportunity to save a lot of money doing that, like working from home and in school, not having to pay rent. So then we were actually able to buy our first house when we were like I think 19 and 20.
Well, when we were 19, Taylor was 19 and Taylor had just turned 19 and I was 19. We're a year apart, and so we got a house under contract back then. We had $20,000 and figured we were going to do 5-10% down. So we were able to get a house under contract just outside or just in the vicinity of Fanshawe College. And what we learned at the time is we couldn't get a mortgage because we didn't have credit and we didn't have any family backing to kind of give us that just kind of help us through cosign. Yeah. So we actually ended up having to live at Taylor's house for another year and a half, which then kind of the market exploded. Yeah. So what went from having a $150,000 budget to buy a single family house, now all of a sudden went up to $250,000 maybe was our budget. Which seems crazy now to think that you could buy a single family house in London for $250,000. But we managed to buy this really rundown house in East London near Argyle Mall. So we bought it for $199,000. And it needed a lot of work. Actually, Taylor ended up coincidentally going to school with the person that lived in that house, and it was used as like a drug house at the time.
Wow. Small world.
So we went in there. Yeah, it was odd that like she was in class with somebody and just what a coincidence. Yeah, it's a very small world.
Yeah.
So we ended up fixing up that house, and it literally went from me working full-time as an electrician to coming home at night, and Taylor and I remember the one night we were like hammering out tiles in our hallway just to get it ready for putting down flooring on the weekend. So all in, we spent about a year like renovating that house. And we managed to refinance it for $340,000 about a year and a half later. So that kind of gave us like some working capital to then go out and buy some rental properties.
But at that point, like you guys didn't have real estate in your head, like real estate investing.
So I guess where I got the real estate bug was I went out west when I was 18. I finished electrical techniques at Fanshawe College, and I was trying to become an electrician. And it was very difficult at the time to get somebody to sign me on as an electrician. And again, coincidentally, my mom was talking to somebody who knew somebody out west, and they were just looking for somebody to come out there, or they were looking for hundreds of apprentices to come out there and work on the oil fields. Yeah. So I went out there when I was 18, kind of dropped everything. Taylor and I had, we were dating for about a year, and the guy that I was living with there out west, he was 21 years old at the time. I was 18, and I was always into talking about money with people. Talking about business. I always wanted to, kind of get to that next step. So me and this guy, we were talking one night, and he said, "You really got to get into real estate." He said, "I just surpassed having $100,000 in my bank account. And at the time, I actually remember moving out west. I had like $6,000 in my bank account and drained all of it. Like, you know, because I had to buy like bed frame, like just managed to just have no money. I actually couldn't pay rent the first month because I didn't have money.
From furnishing or from
just from furnishing.
Also?
I was able to pay my first month's rent, but usually you have to put a last month's deposit. And luckily I was living with this a nice old lady at the time before I moved into this other house, and she was, you know, oh, don't worry, pay me when you get paid next. But yeah, so when I was living with this guy, he was saying, you know, you got to get into real estate. You know, I just surpassed having $100,000. And I can only help to think, right? There was 6 bedrooms in this house. We were all paying $800 or $900 at the time. And he had 5 houses on the street that he owned. So 8 times 5 times, you know, he was making a lot of money.
Killing it.
He was 21.
21. And he was only buying more. And he was kind of telling me like, oh, I just buy them and then I refinance them a few years later. He didn't really understand what he was. Well, at the time, the power of what he was doing, probably.
Yeah,
I mean, now I can only imagine.
Are you still connected with him?
I'm not.
Oh,
but I remember when I came back, or kind of after he told me that, I was just thinking in my head, like, how do we save up? Like, how do I save up money every single week? At the time, I was, like, investing in mutual funds. So I would just put, like, $150 a week into mutual funds. And then eventually it was $200 a week, then $500 a week. And then kind of Taylor and I got on the same train where we're like, let's try and save as much money as possible. Because, you know, even to get your first $10,000 is very difficult to save up. It is really hard, especially being paid hourly. You know, like entrepreneurs always say, you don't want to make money, you want to create money, right? Yeah. So there's bigger opportunities than, you know, just kind of working hourly, but it's very hard to get out of that. So we knew we wanted to get into real estate kind of at that point, but I don't know, you want to talk about how you felt about real estate?
This is how the conversation will go.
Here, I'll pass it.
How we going?
Well, maybe about how you were hesitant at the time, because when I was so the way it kind of started was I was listening to bigger. This would have been 2019.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I got connected through like Matt McKeever.
Yeah.
And then, you know, naturally people were saying like go to meetups, listen to Bigger Pockets. So I remember I started listening to Bigger Pockets, and I would like have a bath at night and literally like just sit there for like hours listening to Bigger Pockets. I was like fascinated. You know, I'd always try and look at the ones like, you know, 21-year-old like quits his job or whatever, you know, because I was always inspired about people taking like massive action and really like doing what people say is kind of impossible, right? Like even when we tell people now, like, you know, we don't really work like full time, it's a lot of people are kind of fascinated about it, but I don't think people realize how obtainable it is for everyone to kind of do this. I mean, obviously if everyone was doing it, there probably wouldn't be an opportunity, but there's so much opportunity in the country we live in that so we're listening to Bigger Pockets, and naturally I would just try and get Taylor to listen to them while I was around. So
Taylor, what was, I guess, like how did you break the ice and be like, okay, let's do this?
I think like our first house, like that's when we started listening to a lot of podcasts. We actually had one of Jeremy's co-workers live with us, and we did like a house hack in the basement. Oliver was like paying $500 and was living in the basement, and that's not something I enjoyed, having to share a kitchen and bathroom and everything with this random dude. So anyways, interested in podcasts or listening to podcasts and stuff like that. And then OREC 2019 was the thing that kind of like pushed me fully into it. And I remember Jeremy was like, it's like $200. Like, I'm like, we're gonna spend $200 to go to this real estate event. Like, that's so much money. And like, I don't know. Anyways, he convinced me to do it. And then I was like, wow, there's like so much opportunity, and there's so many like successful people. It's local, it's real. It's not like in the States where houses can be purchased for $40,000. And like, you're like, can you do that in Canada at that point? So then, and then I really kind of got into it after that.
Yeah, and what was cool at the event was who's now, like the Kellen and Angie, who are now like our best friends, they were both speaking at the event. And Kellen at the time, I want to say he was maybe 26. He had 10 properties at the time. And when he finished his speech, because he was still working full time, he was like, and after like, you know, yesterday was my last day at work. Like I quit, and then they were going on like a 3-month van trip. So it was really cool to see people like in your community that were doing this. You know, it wasn't, you know, somebody that came from like the States and, you know, trying to sell out this big arena to try and, you know, just hype people up to make money. It was like a real event of like real people, you know, actually taking action.
And it's crazy because I feel like you have to see real people doing stuff before you convince yourself that you can do it. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where that's why like the meetups and like the conferences and events are so important, because it kind of opens your eyes and your perspective, and then that's all you kind of think about, right?
Yeah, and I think your circle really has a big influence on that. And I know, like, even now, there's really nothing where I ever want to look at and think like there's no way we can't do that, because there's when you're connected with people who are, you know, trying to uplift you all the time, trying to inspire you, they're doing inspiring things, it's hard not to take action.
Yeah.
Right?
I had the question, so like I did a little bit of research, and you quit your job first, right, before getting into real estate, right? And then you quit yours the following year after, right? What kind of pushed you guys each to make that jump, and like how did it feel while seeing the other one kind of make that jump? Was it motivating? Was it kind of like, were you worried about it?
Yeah, so I'd say Jeremy's was like COVID happened, so like that was part of it where he got laid off, and at first we're like, okay, great, like this is a good time to start working on real estate, and then he's like, his boss is like, okay, it's time to come back now, and Jeremy's like, I don't want to come back now. So I remember Jeremy like came to me and you were like, so like, what do you think about me quitting my job? And like you gave me all of the reasons of like why he should quit his job. And at that point, like I was still in university, I was working part-time, and I was like, I don't really feel confident about this, and then you just like kept going on, and I'm like, sounds like you already made up your decision.
Yeah,
like,
so
I don't think I have a vote.
So I got laid off for like a 2-week period, and it's crazy to think about, but I remember our boss calling us and being like, guys, I don't know what to do, like all of our contractors said like all the sites are closed down, like, and you know all we did is worked for commercial clients and residential clients, so it was tough. Nobody wanted you in their house, and nobody really knew what they could do.
Yeah.
So we got laid off for 2 weeks, and in that 2-week time period, where I had a lot of time to spend on real estate, we managed to get 3 more properties under contract, and I couldn't at the time. I was thinking, you know, like I'm gonna go back to my job, so I could see a clear way of how we were able to accomplish these properties, but then I got laid off, and then it was like the 3rd property, and so I said to my realtor, we got to try and get a vendor take back mortgage on this property, because I don't think we can finance all of these, because I don't think I'm going to have a job like when these come down. So we were able to manage to do that. But like Taylor said, my boss called me, and I was working on one of our construction sites, and he called me and he's like, hey, I need you to come back to work. And I said, hey, like I'm a little busy right now, I just need to call you back in a sec. But I was thinking in my head of all the things like that could go right, like making this decision. That's what, like, I'm very like risk adverse, and I would say Taylher's more conservative.
Perfect partnership.
Yeah, so I was like, let's just do it. What's worst case scenario? You know, we at the time we didn't have a big portfolio. We certainly weren't like cash flowing.
So what was the situation at that time when you quit your job?
So we had, I think we were working on a duplex on Park Street. So I think that was our 4th property. So there was like on paper it didn't make sense. Yeah. But in my head it did. And so I said to myself, like, what's the worst that can happen? At the time I was probably 19 or 20 years old. We could restart. That's how I felt at the time. Like we didn't build up so much that like now with what we have, I would never want to like start over. Right? Yeah. But at the time I could see like there's not that much. Yeah. And I thought it was worth the risk.
Well, and if you look at it, like, at that point, you're like, okay, you're making X amount of dollars, or you're paying contractors to do it. So, like, an easy way to look at it is, like, instead of paying the contractor that much, like, you can do that, and we can do all the extra things, right?
Yep. So I started working on all the construction sites, and I just justified it because I said, you know, I'm paying people $30 an hour anyways. Yeah. If I went back to work, I would still be paying these people $30 an hour. So why not just get rid of one of the $30 per hour that I'm hiring, and I'll do it for free.
Which is yourself, right?
Which is myself, yeah. Because I was an electrician. I just got my license as well too, and my family, you know, we grew up doing renovations, so I had that background of, you know, how to do kitchens, how to do bathrooms, how to do flooring. So it was nice for a very long time, you know, working on these projects, because it was me and my parents kind of doing them side by side, which was great for, you know, efficient renovations. We knew everything was getting done properly, and it was also really nice too, just being in Chatham all of the time, and that's really where we got started finding off-market deals, because I said, you know, after a while we realized, you know, Taylor was making maybe $300 or $400 a week. There wasn't that much money coming in. Yeah. And at the time, all we had is an Airbnb in our backyard, so that was kind of paying the bills for our house, but it wasn't enough. So then we started kind of wholesaling.
So how do you two like you guys obviously have been through some stressful times together, like, you know, in regards to like, we don't have money this week, how are we gonna make this work, how are we gonna, like, during the 4th house, the 5th house, the 6th house, how do you guys deal with that, like mentally, how do you guys deal with that together or individually?
I feel like for me, like, for what, to your point, when I quit my job, for that was like the money concern. So a lot of our friends were the people that were like, you should quit your job, you're fine, like, everything's good. I wouldn't have like a crazy high paying job. So it was like, you could, like, this is not unreasonable for you to obtain that amount of money, like, through a refinance, through wholesale, through like other sort of kind of like active income sources. So what we did, or like what I did to make myself feel comfortable about it, was like, hey, let's do a refinance, put that money in the refinance into a savings account, and that of like my salary for the year, and then I paid myself from that savings account to a checking account every week my paycheck. So it was like, hey, I'm set for a year. I have like no financial concerns. Like, essentially it's as if I'm working, but now I have 40 hours extra a week to make money different ways.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
And a quick question, because like we always talk about like financial literacy in general, you know, like a lot of Canadians are not financially literate, like more than like 80%. I think it was 79%.
Yeah,
but
like
we
just under 80.
Yeah, and like even me, for example, like I didn't know how to use a credit card till like past 20 years old, because like you learn financial literacy from home, right? And like my parents are immigrants that come from a third world country, so all they know is debt, right? So it's crazy how much financial literacy plays a role in like your life. So how are you guys in regards to like financial literacy? Like, were you guys literate from a young age, or?
And who taught you? That's a real big thing.
Yeah, I think for me it was like when I was my first job was working at McDonald's, and I had always just like no I'm
London.
it was great, and I would always just try and, you know, just set new goals, like, oh, let's try and make like $500 this week. And, like, at the time, right, it was like, you know, going from $500 to $600 was like, that was an extra like 2 days of work at the time. So I'd always try and challenge myself to like how much money I could make, so then I could save. I had this goal of like, I always wanted to like have like $10,000 in my bank account. I thought there was like enough money at the time to like start a business or you know, do something creative. And I think that's where I kind of got the itch, because then I would, you know, I started like reading books like The Wealthy Barber, like Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I think from there just, you know, kind of realized there's hourly money to be made, and then there's like leveraged money to be made, and there's a significant amount of more money to be made leveraging, you know, assets versus going into work.
I like how you made the comment about this 10,000, and like I kind of can relate, because I had a lot of buddies who told me, once you make your first $10,000, that's literally all you need to make, because then how hungry you become to make the next 10.
Yeah.
Right? Because everybody makes 1,000. Not really. You don't really get the concept of what $1,000 can do. 5,000, still same thing. But once you make the first 10,000, like, you're like, wow, I made the first 10,000, didn't take so long, and then you're kind of like powered into making more. Was that something you can relate to?
Yeah, and I think I always saw that I consistently saw the progress, right? So even for me too, when I came back to London, I was always doing side jobs. Like, after I would go to work and then go to work after work to make more money. And what I realized was when I worked for my company, I would make, I think I went anywhere from like $18 to like $32 by the time I was done. But when I was making $18 an hour at work, I was going after work and charging people $40 an hour, and then $40 an hour cash, which actually looked like $55 an hour. So from there, I was just getting, you know, more and more excited about, like, you know, this is something I knew I wanted to work for myself, and I think Taylor the same way. So it was really like, what is the vehicle to get us out of, you know, working for somebody else? And I think there's like a misconception of like, we love real estate. I do love real estate, but the whole reason behind real estate is to give me the freedom in life to do other things. Yeah. So whether it be real estate, whether it be any other sort of business, I would have been happy with all of them. It was really just a vehicle to get me out of that. You know, now we're like traveling full time, or not full time, but over half of the year.
6 months, right?
Yeah, we hang out with a lot of friends. We do a lot of things with people. Like, we're very happy now. So it's not like I don't try and let real estate, or neither does Taylor. We don't let real estate control our life. It's really it was just a vehicle to get us there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, cool. And I was gonna say, like, with like real estate specific, it's one of those things where I feel like people find like there's a big barrier. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you always search online, like, how do I make money? Either you own a business, you invest in stocks, or you buy real estate.
Yeah.
And real estate seems like the hardest or most intimidating one out of all of those. You know what I mean? I guess, how did you guys mentally break through that barrier of like, yeah, we can do this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you guys are super like risky, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, and have big goals and big visions, but you guys succeed in them. Like, what makes you just keep on going?
I would say we broke into the market by finding a market that was affordable. So like when we started, we're like, we want to buy real estate. Can't afford London. Like we afforded our own house, but we can't afford a rental property in London at that point. So we're like, okay, what areas like nearby basically are affordable? And then we kind of just like stumbled upon Chatham, and that was where we could invest. So like breaking in, like people are very like narrow-minded, or very like, I can't afford this. Well, it's like, you probably haven't ran the numbers. Have you like looked at how much money you're spending? Have you looked outside of like a 40-minute radius? Like there's a lot of opportunity, but people are very easily like kind of stuck in one direction.
Yeah, I think the problem is people don't ask the right questions, or nor do they even know what the right question is. So for a lot of people, you yourself, Ricardo, you know, when you came into the mastermind group, and a lot of people in that mastermind group, their thought was, I can't buy real estate, but let's see what this can give me, right? And then you start learning about like alternative strategies, and all of a sudden, it's within reach, right? Yeah. So for a lot of people, they think, if I want to buy my first property, you know, I went to the bank, and the bank said I can only afford $300,000. Well, what the bank's not telling them, nor is society telling them, is maybe you could buy a duplex. And with having one of the sides rented at, you know, maybe $1,800 a month, now all of a sudden you can afford a $600,000 property, because you have income coming in from the other unit. And with that $600,000, all you need is 5% down, right? Because you can do a CMHC loan at 5% down. You don't need 20% down for your first property if you're doing owner occupied. And what they also don't tell you is, for your first property, you can get gifted money. So maybe you can ask friends and family. Maybe you only have $15,000, but maybe you can ask friends and family for the other $15,000. Maybe they have it on a line of credit. So they're going to charge, they're paying 5 or 6% on that line of credit. Maybe you pay them 6.5%. So they're making a little bit of money, and they're also helping you. There's a lot of different ways you can get into the market, but the banks don't really tell you this, right? So that's why it's like important to like educate yourself, because even for us, you know, we bought 2 apartment buildings this year. We didn't have the money in our bank account to buy those apartment buildings, but we had the resources, the people around us, to help us buy those apartment buildings. Yeah. Right. So again, it's kind of just like taking it step by step. And I always try and tell people, like, if you're trying to do something and you can't seem to do that thing, you know, you probably want to ask yourself, like, what is the one thing, or maybe the 2 things holding me back from doing that? So for an investor standpoint, if somebody's not buying a property, let's just say I don't want to buy a property right now, or I want to buy a property, but I feel like I can't. Is it maybe because I'm overwhelmed with the things I have going on in my business? Maybe there's too many renos. Maybe I'm trying to do too many things in my business. Is it potentially money? Do I not have the money to buy that rental property? What is that thing? Because a lot of times, you know, people just say, I can't do that, or I don't want to do that right now. Because they're thinking everything is going against them. But when you kind of narrow it down to like, what's that one thing or 2 things, you can kind of focus on that. So we went to a mastermind last year. Or I guess I did in Taylor.
I just went to Hawaii.
Taylor. So
Hawaii.
Brandon Turner, the host of the Bigger Pockets podcast, had a mastermind in Hawaii. And we were able to go to that. And the big thing with this mastermind that I went to is there was a lot of like really high level investors there. And what I realized is a lot of my problems aren't even problems that come across their desk. And the reason why is they have other people dealing with a lot of the, you know, small, minute tasks in their business. At the time, we maybe had, you know, 10 to like 15 properties, and we hadn't really done that much deal volume. We were kind of just picking it up. But after we went to that mastermind, what basically the consensus was I need to quit almost everything that I'm doing right now. And not, you know, set it and just, you know, make it go away, but hiring the right people in place to really make things more fluid. Because at the time, it was a lot of just survival mode, right? I was trying to talk about, like, you never want to be in survival mode. And at the time, we were in survival mode. And at the time, I didn't think we had the money to pay for all of the outsourcing, right? So we're talking, now somebody's going to manage our entire portfolio. That's 5% of rents. Now, all of a sudden, those property managers are going to have their employees fix all of the problems in these properties. Well, now instead of it being $30 an hour, it's $50 or $80 an hour. So there was a lot of expenses just with that one thing. And then there was, you know, we wanted to hire a business coach to really help us get those systems in place. Then we wanted to hire a bookkeeper. Then we wanted to hire somebody to manage our Airbnbs.
So
these
salaries,
things,
right?
these things all just cost money. And at the time, I couldn't visualize how we could pay for it. But the biggest piece of advice was don't save, you know, X amount of money to lose out on X amount more money. So by us being able to now all of a sudden, instead of spending 5 hours a week finding deals, now because we've gotten rid of all the other things around us, now we have 40 or 50 or however many hours we want to spend finding deals. And what we found was we ended up making more by doing less, right? So we focused our attention on what actually, like, why are we doing real estate? Well, we're doing real estate to make money, right? Like, tenants suck. There's no fun in being like, I want more tenants to talk to more people. That's not why we're in it. We're in real estate to make money. So we should be focusing on the things that generate us income. So thankfully, like, Taylor's been the integrator for our business, and I was been like the visionary. But we had this vision, you know, we were always good at finding off-market leads. So then naturally we said, let's do wholesaling. So let's find deals for ourselves, and ones that don't work, let's sell them to other people and make a profit. And that's really where kind of our, you know, direction went. I think we went to that event almost this time last year.
Yeah.
And I think since then we've probably done, I know last year we did about 20 deals, so we probably did like 8 for the remainder of that year, and we've done about like 20 to 25 this year. So we've done about like 30 deals since then. And leading up to that event, you know, we had like 2 years under our belt at the time. So in 2 years we maybe did like 12 or 13 deals. And then after that, 1 year later, we did almost double that in half the time with doing like a tenth of the work, which is kind of, it's hard to understand, but that's kind of going back to that point of like, you kind of want to hang around people that are like a few steps ahead of you. Yep. You never want like us going and like talking to, you know, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. Like they're not going to be able to help us with our business. They're too far ahead. Yeah. But if you talk to somebody who maybe has 3 or 4 employees and you're just a one-man show, well, like that's a good person to look up to and get mentorship from, because how does he have employees and you don't? Right? There was obviously some sort of barrier that he overcame. So you kind of want to stay connected to people close to you, because they can just get you to that next level, and then you want to keep going.
I was gonna say, like, it seems like there's a lot of like levels to this. You know what I mean? Like, and like for example, like you're an employee, and then you want to own a business, but then you own a business, but then you find out that you're an employee in that business. Yeah. You know, the next level is to get yourself out of there, right? And outsource everything else. Have you guys found that you guys have ever experienced like imposter syndrome during those next levels? Like, for example, like, have you ever felt like you were in a room and you're like, like everyone here feels like, you know, like they're much like smarter or more advanced than I am. Like, well, what am I doing here? Like, and how do you deal with that?
I would say probably more when we started. I felt that now that we've like kind of broken in and we've quit our jobs and we've proven ourselves like in that way, like to our family and friends, that like this is who we are, this is what we do, and this is normal now. I don't feel like I feel that anymore, but I think like starting out is a big jump from going like an employee from somebody else, and you're counting on that income, and people are like, the market's gonna crash. Like there's all of these doubts and objections that you have. So it is, I feel like we definitely like, well, I felt like that more at the beginning of like our journey, and now I feel like we've kind of passed that, and I feel more confident like jumping into new not into industries, but like we're like, hey, now we're gonna be realtors. We're like, hey, we're gonna crush that. Like we're already in like
pivoting from where you're
at.
It's like the idea, and I was talking to our business coach about this, because I said to her, I said, like at the time, I said, Bang, I want to really step back from coaching, and I really want to really focus on the growth of our business. And I said to her, I said, the reason I'm comfortable with stepping back from coaching is because if I ever want this opportunity again, I believe I can make this opportunity present itself again. And that's something that's given me a lot less hesitation to give up on things, because I know if I want to have that thing back, we are all the type of people to make that thing come back, right? Because we're going to make those opportunities present itself again. So we're able to turn things on and off. But in terms of like the imposter syndrome, I think with the real estate community and entrepreneurship community, especially at like a beginner to intermediate level, which I think we're all in that bubble. People getting started, people, a few years in. I think a lot of people are very supportive, and if they're not, it's almost better that they've presented that, kind of right away, because then, I no longer need to associate myself with somebody like this, right? Because I want to be around uplifting people all of the time. There's a big reason why I don't hang out with my high school friends anymore, and I hang out with entrepreneurs all the time. It's because they always keep you level-headed. There's never a bad day. There's never somebody that you can't reach out to that can help you, and everybody that we hang around with is consistently trying to be like a better person. So in that regard, it's hard to ever feel like I'm not welcome here. Yeah. Because even, some of the newest investors I've met, me and all of my friends treat them all the same. We were all there at one point. So why not help other people? Yeah. It feels good, and there's a lot of benefits too to like going back to the basics. Like coaching people and going back to the basics was important. It's same with like, me, like, I'm a big golfer and stuff. And a lot of times too, it's like, you just got to go back to the basics. Like if things aren't working, sometimes it's like the littlest things. So you're helping other people and also helping yourself at the same time.
Let's get into that a little bit.
Bring it up. Yeah.
I was going to say, I know, I saw this big famous YouTube video, the Dead Adder.
Okay.
With you and Conor Malicki.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the golfing video on YouTube.
There you go.
So
I remember that video.
Ago was that?
That was a long time ago.
10 years ago.
It was a funny video.
Yeah,
I loved
it was great.
Anyway, shout out to Conor Malicki. Like I actually reached out to him for some golf lessons, but
I had golf lessons.
Yeah. But anyways, you're really good at golf, man. Like you're really good. Like, what's the vision with golf? Like, are you trying to go pro eventually?
I don't think so. I think for me, and kind of what we do with like everything is just try and see how far we can take things. Yeah. I find a lot of excitement with that, and that's, I think, the next thing for us is like being realtors and really trying to like serve a purpose with being realtors, and really trying to kind of outperform what we believe is possible. Like with that, we're never, trying to compete with other people. But Taylor and I are very much try to compete with ourselves, and that goes with everything that we do, whether that's like our relationship or like friendship or anything, right? We're just always we're always just trying to be like better in everything we do, and I think that's kind of like the mentality you need if you wanna be successful.
It's crazy you bring that up. Literally, I heard this today. It's like, you can't compete with anybody else if you're only competing with yourself, because once you beat yourself, you beat everybody else.
Yeah.
And I was
I like that.
And it was weird. I heard that today, literally, and now you saying it's like kind of that deja vu moment where it's like, I think if you really invest in yourself and kind of put all your eggs in there, I don't think there's anybody else to compete with at that point, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting reality trying to compete with people in real estate because, especially in the community that we're all a part of, again, the beginner to novice investors or intermediate investors, you hear a lot of people talking about, how many properties they have, and we really try and like stray away from that. What's unfortunate is like a lot of people take you more seriously when they know kind of the things you've done. So that's kind of the only downfall or one of the downfalls. But what I realized was there's a lot of bigger fish out there that you don't say anything, right? And those are the people that I admire, right? So there's a lot of people that I golf with who, the big time developers, building 500,000 houses a year, building apartment buildings. These guys aren't on social media. These guys aren't bragging. These guys like to keep their mouth shut. And the reason why is because they're thinking to themselves, and they're worried about themselves. They're not worried about what I think about them. Yeah. They don't care. They could care less what I think about them, right? And that's when I realized I really wanted to try and get off social media and just focus on our business, which is kind of when I stopped kind of boasting and things like that. And a lot of times it's not like me it's not like me grinding, staring at the computer, making phone call after phone call after phone call. But a lot of times it's just having more time to think about, the things going on in our business. Because what Taylor and I realized is our time's better spent making, more calculated decisions than just, as many decisions as we possibly can.
It's probably a tough balance though, is because I don't find like you ever boast, but it's a tough balance because you probably got a lot of business through social media as well, right? So how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's tough for sure. So I mean, with social media, we always try to educate people, and inspire people, but a lot of people get inspired by you saying like I've done all of these things, and then they think, well, there's an opportunity for me too. Yeah. Right.
I just say that's a really good example of why you can't compare, because you can't compare apples to apples. 10 properties in one city is not 10 properties in another. 10 properties owned by yourself is not 10 properties owned with a bunch of joint venture partners. Like, everything looks so different on social media than it is in reality, so you can't really compare that way.
I like that you guys say that. It's like, it's not face value, right? There's like a whole different story behind it, right? So
did you guys ever find that barrier between like you said you don't hang out with your high school friends anymore, right? Like, I guess in every entrepreneur's life it comes to a point where like, it kind of sounds bad, but where you outgrow people, you know what I mean? How did you guys deal with that at first, I guess? Like,
yeah, and I guess at that point, it's not like I didn't outgrow them in a way where like I felt like better than them.
No,
I just felt like there was an opportunity where I can like surround myself with people who are kind of like on the same trajectory as me. It's not to say that's the only correct, like, what we did isn't the only path to like success, because really life's just about like being happy. So whatever gives you happiness is, for us, all of us, it's about like pushing forward every day. Yeah. For some people, it's just hanging out every day, right? They're happy. They make $50,000 a year, and that to them is exactly where they want to be.
I would say it was kind of more of a natural transition because it's people that you can relate to.
Yep.
I'm sure you found this too, where you're talking with people like you want to talk about real estate, you want to talk about business, but it's like it's not the time and place, and it's like, well, what else do you talk about if that's your
then
life?
You feel like you're kind of like people ask how are you doing, and then when you say how you're doing, you feel like you're bragging.
Yeah.
But like that's actually how I'm doing now, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that's a weird like conversation, because you feel like everyone's like this guy keeps on bragging about himself, but you're actually just being honest, and that's the most important about hanging out with people that are like you, because you can actually have those normal conversations, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's even same when I'm golfing with other people, because I'm a part of like the Oaks, which is like basically it's just all like business owners and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's cool because like our conversations are about like, and it's never bragging, but it's a lot of things I want to talk. I like talking about money. And not because I like flashing my money. I don't have photos on my Instagram like me flashing money. I like making
Imagine
money.
Jeremy with all the $100 bills.
I like building new businesses when the time's right. I like building businesses with Taylor. I like, but again, it's like it's different conversations that you wouldn't be able to relate to with other people.
It doesn't help that like money is very like taboo, and like talking about money to people that don't have money is like not a positive conversation typically.
Well, even to you ask someone how much you make, nobody wants to talk about that, right? It's like, and right.
But well, it's like a lot of parents, right? They wrote like they or their kids like, you don't ask people what they make.
Yeah.
But in our culture, I think, and it's never like how much do you make, and I want to tell you how much I make so I can tell you how much better I am as you. Yeah, but it's all about like like our conversations are like, man, how much money did you make on that deal? Like that's awesome. Like are you gonna do this with that? Like you can do this and that, because we're always just trying to help each other.
Like you don't feel crazy like when you tell someone like, oh, I'm trying to refinance this, buy a triplex in less than 2 months. Like they're like, oh, you're crazy. Like what are you doing?
Yeah, like we have friends who like now even again it's all like it's just these ladders when we're consistently trying to climb them to end up where we want to end up. But even now, like some of the conversations are, like now it's like millions of dollars people are talking about, whereas like 3 years ago it was like $20,000 we were talking about, right? So it's like, again, it's not to be flashy or anything like that, but it's again like you can see the progress amongst all the people that we surround ourselves with, and it's always cool to look back and think like, I started like me and like there's a ton of investors that I met at my first networking event, and there a bunch of us, we just kind of all were like, this is it, like we're going all in, right? And it's kind of cool to look back and see like how far we've all sort of come.
Everyone at the end of the race with you, pretty much.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
we're all ending up at the same point.
So cool.
Yeah,
so
and at the end of the day, it's what makes you happy, right? Like we always had the goal, let's buy real estate and let's travel, and for a lot of people, they can't. They seem to always just work and never actually leave time for the things they actually want. Whereas Taylor and I were very much like, we're here. Let's do like what we set off to like actually do.
Kind of cool because now we can have like lifestyle goals. Like this year we're like let's travel 6 months of the year, and then we packed that in and we're like, okay, maybe we don't want to travel that much. That's like a lot of travel. And it's like, so we can kind of like actually play around with our life goals and not just like how much money do we need to make, like, you know, what job do we need to get or whatever.
That's the cool thing that I found about you guys is you guys actually travel a lot. You know what I mean? Like I was getting coached from you guys when you guys were in Costa Rica. You know what I mean? Like Jamie's wearing a Hawaiian shirt and he's coaching us. But like at the end of the day, it's like, how do you guys like like I guess like probably a lot of people are wondering like how are you guys able to spend 2 months in a different country and have all the business still work?
Yeah, and it goes back to what's the thing holding you back from that. So you really you would try and find a source of income that would replace the income you would have otherwise made when you were back home. Yeah. So for us, it was, you know, we were coaching people. We were also wholesaling, which wholesaling at the time was very lucrative. So, but again, you know, then we had the rental properties. We were refinancing properties. Just multiple streams of income that kind of all equated to giving us enough money for what we needed.
Yeah. And then Taylor, I was going to ask you like this I guess this industry is very male dominant, you know what I mean? Have you had to face any barriers like being like a woman entrepreneur in this sort of business?
Yeah. I think it's just like intimidating for any new person, and then a woman going into a group of like old men or like I feel like young men is actually you know, no, but young men is a better like, you know, conversation, easier to start, but versus like where you're entering a room with a bunch of older men that you're not, you know, what do you talk about then, especially starting out? I feel like to your point, to imposter syndrome, like once you're confident and you can like speak about your life, your portfolio, like you can kind of hold your own, it makes life a lot easier. I would say it's just, and then like I would say golf is one of the things. So like last year, so like I was talking to Sarah Adder about that, and we were kind of just chatting about how like a lot of real estate investing meetups are like golf events, which is like women do play golf, but like not a lot of young women play golf, right? It's normally something like you do when you're retired or you're older. So she was saying like, I want to have something that's like more inclusive of everybody, which I think is great, but it's also why I started to do golf or like get lessons in golf, so that I could hold my own on the golf course with a bunch of men, right?
Yeah. Is the line deals are made on the golf course very true?
I think for me it's a lot of times it's just trying to like, I'm not trying to like find deals necessarily, but you know, connect myself with people who could put deals together with me.
Yeah, I would say like last year we went to a networking event on the golf course, and like that's where I met a big private lender that we still use.
Yeah, I've had
a friend.
Like, 2 of my last golf rounds, I've had conversations with people that have like upwards of like $500,000 each that want to potentially lend it at some point, right? So again, you're just like you're just connecting all these dots together.
How do you guys build on your networking skills? Because like this business, you definitely need to be able to network. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think social media for sure. Like Instagram. I think now I'm close to like 4,000 followers, which is big to like, you know, whether we're like selling a deal or if we've never like tried to raise private funds that way. We've just kind of had our own internal network. Yeah. But it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, I think before the podcast started, of there's a time and place to network. You know, a lot of the biggest investors, actually, funny enough, we were at the Chatham meetup this week, and I met from what I know, the biggest like couple real estate like investor couple in Chatham. I met them.
Wait, is that Bob?
No.
Oh, no. I was gonna say I met Bob last time. He's a cool guy.
But anyways, when I was there, he said I didn't know about this event. You know, I just found out about it through Sarah, our property manager. She said I could come. He's like, you know, I'm not on social media. I'm not on Facebook. This guy's got 45 houses. Like properties, right? So again, it's not to say you need to, you know, a lot of times we, you know, preach like your network is your net worth, but your action also goes towards that, right? Because you do see a lot of people going, you know, conference to conference or, you know, maybe coaching program to coaching program with years and years of this with little action. And I think to really get ahead, you have to be willing to take some risk. You know, obviously we can mitigate that risk through education, but you have to be willing to take action. And there's a lot of times where it doesn't seem possible. Like there's been a lot of times where I've said I can't physically understand how we could buy another property because we're like capped out. and I don't want people like watching this to think we have like tons of money, because I could tell you there's probably been like, I don't know, 5 or 10 times where I've been like, if like this went wrong, and also this went wrong, like that wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're trying to stretch out all the money we have. If we have $80,000 of deployable income or money in our bank account, I'm not saying to myself, let's keep that in there so I feel safe. What we're saying to ourselves is let's spend $75,000 on a down payment and just hope we don't run out of the other $5,000 in the meantime.
Yeah.
Like we would never take risks that crazy. We would never, but kind of on that line of like you kind of have to take risks that you've never, and a lot of times it seems even worse in the present moment because you've never actually done that thing before, right? Like if you've never bought 10 properties in a year, it seems very difficult to buy 10 properties in a year. Last year we did 20, and by like May of this year we were already at 20. Right? So it's like, but the year prior, like when we were at 10, I was like, I don't understand how we're even gonna get to like 11.
Yeah.
Right? But you kind of got to just keep pushing and going back to that question of what's the thing holding me back? Right? Because you can't, nobody does this on their own. Right? So it's just trying to pool people together that kind of get you there.
How many property do you guys have in your portfolio right now?
We're always anywhere between like 15 to like 18.
Yeah.
Now.
How many units would that be then?
We're always typically around like 65 to 75. We've sold off quite a bit. We sold like a 12-unit building this year. And then basically the beginning of this year, one of our goals was we wanted no more partners. So we had a 12-plex with a partner that we sold. We had a triplex and a duplex with a partner that we sold. And we had 2 4-plexes with a partner that we sold. And then we also sold a few of our properties as well too. So we kind of shrunk our portfolio, but then maximized our portfolio. With what we had. So there's a lot of times where, we'll buy like a 4-unit building and, it needs a lot of work. So instead of saying like, I want 12 units of these, we're like, let's buy the 1 4-plex. Let's clean up that 4-plex. Again, going back, real estate's all about making money. If we've turned over a property, right? So it's got, market rents, fully renovated, and we've refinanced it. Sometimes the rents don't supplement what the actual value is. So we can't even maximize all the equity in that building. So we would say to ourselves, again, like ego aside, because this is all just about making money, right? Well, it makes more sense to sell that building to then, move on and buy. Because, when we bought our first 12-plex, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like I always dreamed about that. And then we sold it. And I remember when our partner was like, we need to sell this. Just because he didn't want to really be in the real estate game anymore, and which was convenient because we wanted to get out of partners. For a while, I was like, man, this sucks. Like this 12-plex, which was it was a really nice building. I was like, this thing is going away. It was like it's going away, and like it was always a dream of ours to like own an apartment building. But then again, we're like, why don't we just do it ourselves, right? So then we went and bought two of our own. But again, it was like, selling that 12-plex was a very important move because, again, it got rid of partners. There was 10 awful tenants in this building out of the 12, like awful people.
He's like, great building.
10 out of 12. There's not
we were trying to go through it, but nobody would leave. So it made sense, right? The building was at its peak performance for what we could do. Aside from going and offering people like $50,000 to leave, which it doesn't make sense. Yeah. So again, it had equity we couldn't access unless we sold it. So it made sense to sell that building. And if we had bought that out from our partner, it financially wouldn't have made sense because again, it would have been a lot of money down, and not a lot of money being made on the money you put into it, right? Yeah. So we're always trying to look at like what's the return on investment. So if you put $100,000 in, we're always trying to look for a certain percentage back out of that. Obviously with the goal of getting all of our money back and then it being a property that just kind of funnels itself. But
yeah. How was your strategy changed? Because like you guys got into the real estate in 2019, is that correct? 2019, yep. You guys got into it, so you guys have enjoyed a uphill climb, yep. Right? Yep. Now we're seeing things are getting a little shaky. A lot of like interest rates are going up. A lot of investors are getting worried. How is your strategy changing?
Yeah. I would say, yeah. So for the past 3 years, like you're right, it's been upward. So people have been able to complete, and us included, have been able to complete the BRRRR method. So the buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat very quickly, like 6 months or less, like very quickly. Where now, like that's not going to be the case. So for us, we're not going to be renovating likely as much as we've been doing. We're also not going to be in a huge rush to renovate, knowing that we're going to be refinancing right away. We've been getting more vendor takebacks, so seller financing. That most of the ones we've done recently are like 2-year terms. So we're not in a huge rush to refinance.
So
like
could you kind of explain a VTB?
Sure.
Vendor takeback.
Yeah. So it's seller financing. So essentially the owner likely doesn't have a mortgage or has a very small amount of mortgage, and they are going to be the bank for you. So they're essentially acting as like Scotiabank, but you can negotiate everything. So you're going to negotiate the length of the term, probably 1 to 5 years, your interest rate if you're doing interest only, or principal and interest, and like how high it is, and the loan to value. So how much money you're putting down. So you get to decide all of that in talks with the seller, assuming they don't have a mortgage and they can hold the financing and are happy to do that. Then you pay them the mortgage payment, you pay them the down payment, and then they can defer their capital gains if it's a rental property over the length of the loan.
Yeah, okay. The benefit to vendor take-back mortgages and why they're so important right now is for a lot of sellers, price is everything. Mm-hmm. I would say for like 95% of people, price is everything, and everything else it doesn't matter to them. So at this point, because we're long-term investors, we have time to kind of weather the storm. So the most important thing at this point is basically making sure you don't go under, right? And I think we're going to see a lot of people go under, and a lot of people like are kind of in the process right now of going under, just being over leveraged, and just being way too risky, right? With not a lot of cash reserves. So kind of like what Taylor was saying, we're trying to be very cash heavy right now. So for example, we have a 3-bedroom unit that's probably about $100,000 renovation. It's got 14-foot ceilings. It's a really nice unit, but it's fully gutted. So instead of finishing that unit to renovate it and maybe only getting like $1,500 a month for rent, for that property, we're going to wait until it's close to renewal on that mortgage. So then we can put the $100,000 in to renovate that unit and then refinance it pretty close to once we spent it, get it back out. So for that property we're locked in for 2 years, we can't refinance it. So to do it now, we'd have $100,000 locked in and maybe only make $15,000 or $20,000 until the loan's up for renewal. So we're doing more things like that. And but yeah,
I would say it's also like balancing, which has always been a thing, but more so now when you want to have cash for when the market changes, there's opportunity, or so you don't go under, is the active and passive income. So like most of our portfolio is passive income. We don't really do flips, so it's like wholesales. That's why being a realtor, we did coaching. Sometimes we do sell things, and then refinance. So refinances have been like a big source of essentially like active income. Well, your loan to value or like our DCRs aren't going to come in because your interest rates are much higher. So like refinances are no longer like a good, strong, viable option to what they have been the past 3 years. So like that's also why pivoting to becoming a realtor is another source of income for us to keep generating active income.
So is that why you guys kind of seeked out becoming realtors?
I would say it's more so the realtor thing came from so we hired Spencer. Spencer's on our team, and Spencer's our acquisitions manager. So I guess going into that a little bit, what Spencer's whole job is finding off-market properties, undervalued properties, and then doing basically one of the three of the following. We either wholesale it to somebody. So what wholesaling is essentially I come to one of you guys and I say, I want to buy your house. You say, okay, let's agree on $200,000. Then I can go to another investor, Taylor, and I can say, hey, I've got Jordan's property under contract for $200,000, but I want to sell it to you. I want to sell you this piece of paper. Because in this legal piece of paper, I have a clause that allows me to assign it to somebody else. I'm then going to assign it to Taylor for whatever price we agree on, and then I'll make the difference between $200,000 and whatever I sell it to Taylor for. So maybe Taylor wants to buy it for $240,000, and then we'll make that spread. And the benefit to that is a lot of times, they're quick closings. A lot of times they're properties like we can't even get into, so we're kind of buying them sight unseen, which is why they have these kind of low price points. But then again, kind of during the pandemic, there was no deals where you could buy on the MLS. It was very difficult. So for a lot of people, wholesaling was kind of their way of finding those deals. The other thing we do is, potentially wholesale it, which is essentially buying the property and then selling it. Usually we're going in and having to like clean out all the junk in the property, like whether that be like a hoarder unit or maybe like a tenant trash the unit and the landlord's just done. So we'll go in, clean it up, and then relist it. And for a lot of people, you'd think like, oh, why don't they just clean it out and do it themselves? But there's been times where we've cleaned out properties, with like two, full like 40-yard bins worth of garbage. And if somebody that's like 80 years old, wants to do this, or maybe they don't have money to actually even pay somebody to do that.
Just too overwhelming for me.
Too overwhelming. So for a lot of people, it's like, I bought this 20 years ago. I paid $15,000 for it. I'm making a happy profit. And, as they're an investor, so they know us as an investor. We're not doing this for free. Yeah. We're not in this to, just make no money, because we got to also make ends meet as well too. And then the other thing is we'll potentially buy it. So we keep about, I would say like 25% of the deals. But again, it's all about just, where we can make kind of money in spreads, right? So so we make the spread on the wholesale. And then after that, we potentially wholesale it, which is, again, buying the property, cleaning it up, and reselling it for a small margin. Usually they're really tight in terms of making a spread, because you've got your lawyer fees twice, because you got to buy it and then sell it. You've got realtor fees on the back end. You've got private money on the front end that you're paying for. Usually, a lender's going to want 3 months of interest plus a little lender fee. The cleaning fees, you've got to pay for people to clean the garbage out. So like a deal like that, they are risky, and the margins aren't great. So for example, we did one a couple months ago, maybe in July. We bought it for $155,000, and we sold it for $200,000. But we didn't actually have to do really anything with that property. And that one there only fetched, I think it was like maybe an $18,000 profit. So you can see like there looks to be $45,000 of profit, but after you start dishing out money to everybody for this and that, the margins get really shrunk. And for that one in particular, we got under contract in April. So kind of when the market was, it was still good. People were thinking like, oh, we just got the one interest rate hike, everything's probably going to be okay. And then it just started tanking. Right,
Yeah.
Interest rates started going higher and higher. So then we closed in July. So there was a lot of risk for us. And at the time when we bought it, I thought we could maybe get about $250 for it. Then we ended up getting $200. So you can see how quickly or how risky they can become, and that's why we try and wholesale them if possible. So again, we could have wholesaled that one for $175,000, made the exact same amount of profit margin
without the work.
So that's why we try and wholesale them if possible, but we're always committed to buying them.
But like the benefit to, I guess, us and the seller is for a wholesale is like, okay, we know if we have to close in 7 days, like that's typically the case where it's like, seller, we'll do this deal if you can close in like 7 days. So it's like, you can't assign that to somebody and hope that they can close, because there's a good chance they can't. You need a really confident investor where it's like, we know we have access to private capital and that we can be able to close that in 7 days, so we'll do it and know the profit will be smaller, but it's better than nothing, right?
It's just money coming in at the end of the day, right? If you guys know you even have the resources too, where you can call the right people. As you guys outsource most of your stuff, it's like, okay, come do this, done, job's done. You're just making the profit at the end, right?
And the benefit to the wholesales are, we get to use our private lenders' money. They're making a sweet return. And our lawyer gets 2 very easy transactions. He's getting paid, the realtor gets paid, so you're kind of you're paying a lot of people along the way too,
feeding the team.
And it's kind of cool even now too, like having Spencer, because there's a lot of times where we're able to just like kind of take what people have and just help them really build on that. So like even Spencer went from just like kind of your average job to now he's doing very well with us. Same with like our contractor. He started as like a one-man show. He's got 6 employees, probably going to do like $1 million and a bit worth of like revenue this year. That's which amazing. He went from like 2 years ago probably doing like $80,000 worth of revenue. So
maybe not even. I was saying that was almost 3 years ago now, but he started by
he was a handyman.
He changed a doorknob for us.
And he's 21 years old right now. So like it's kind of cool to be able to.
So he's a baby.
Yeah. So like even
perfect though. Like when he's 30, you know how good that kid's gonna be working for you guys.
But even our property,
we wholesale him his first property.
Yeah. Yeah, and the same thing. I was always telling him, Josh, you got to buy properties. Jeremy, I can't buy property. I said, yes, you can. So then I found him one. It's right on the water. It's a sweet little lot. It's exactly what he wanted. And then I helped him buy it. Right. So again, like we're giving as much as like. You know, we always try and make sure like we have enough, and we're a lot of times we're just trying to help like other people too. Like even our property manager, I remember saying to them when we first signed on with them, I said like, do people ask you to like send them off market leads of like people like your clients selling? And they say, yeah, like everybody asks us. And I said, do you ever like, you know, give them the leads? And they say no, like, you know, confidentiality, things like that. So we were talking to them, and within that conversation, we kind of found out that they wanted to grow from like 300 units to 600 units. So what we did is we just started sharing more and more about them. So then naturally they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think now they're at like 650 units. Damn. So, but what's cool is they share all the leads with us, right? So we built the relationship. They realize this isn't like a one-way street. And then every time they give us, you know, our property manager, she just gave us a lead that we closed on last week, and I gave her $2,500. So imagine like, you know, somebody making, you know, probably 25, 35, maybe $40 an hour, and then all of a sudden, you know, one of your clients gives you like $2,500 for sending an email. It's a pretty sweet ROI for her, and it's great for us because now, you know, for us to find a lead might cost us $5,000 or $10,000. So for us, it's a win, and for her, it's a win. So everybody's happy, right? And then the seller got a really easy transaction, right? So for that one, we closed in 7 days. Yeah. Like most people, you know, if he wanted to sell that on the market, it would have taken a realtor probably, you know, 7-10 days to get it on the market. Yeah. Then, you know, the realtor might have taken 30 days to sell it, and then there might have been a 60-day close. So instead of 2-3 months, it's a week. Right, so there's a lot of benefits. Maybe he could have got a little bit more on market, but there's a benefit. There's always,
and it was seller financing.
And there was seller financing too.
Yeah. So. How important is it for you guys to give back to your community? Like when did you guys think like, you know, like we should be giving back, because you guys do give back a lot?
Yeah.
I would say like. For me, I went to school in psychology and child social institutions and social service worker. So it was like, and then I worked in a group home. So I feel like that's like that was like my role, and like that was like what I thought I was gonna do, was like giving back and working in that kind of field. And that's kind of like diverted from that. So it's nice to be able to like still give back and like contribute in not ways that I had imagined, but like in totally different ways. Right?
There's that, like, you know, a lot of people say, like, if you were to ask somebody, like, what would you do if you won, like, the lottery? Like, a lot of people would be like, oh, I'm going to end, you know, homelessness. I'm going to do all of these things. And maybe the question would be, like, well, why aren't you doing that now, but just on, like, a smaller scale? Like, why can't you donate, like, $5 a week? Right? Like, why does it have to be $5 million you donate? So that was the same with us. Is like, yeah, we can't afford to donate $1 million a year. But maybe for us, $10,000 is reasonable. Right? Or why can't we donate, like, you know, even you go to a grocery store, like, hey, do you want to donate to this cause? Absolutely. Like, absolutely. Yeah. Why not? I remember the one time we were somewhere. Where was that?
I got my engagement ring.
And I think they said something, it was like, do you want to donate? And, you know, usually it's like, and this isn't to brag or anything, it was just funny, but I said, I was like, I don't know, $50 or something. And she's like, $50? I said, yeah, why not? Like, is that okay?
You're feeling good. You got it.
I got you. I just love the your ring.
People probably donate like $2. And he's like, well, for like $50 isn't that bad when you look at the price that you're already spending, right?
Yeah. There's been like a few times too I've like bought people groceries and stuff, and I know a lot of people like there definitely is a benefit to like sharing it, because then it gives other people like, I would love to do something like that too. I don't really like, you know, like the public promotion. Like, look at me, I'm buying, but it is cool. Like, I know last year at Christmas I bought. There was somebody ahead of me, and I said like, hey, no, like no worries, I'm just gonna pay for this. Yeah. And I was buying like a bubbly or something. Like but you feel really good. Like for like the next 24 hours, I felt like really good.
And the weird thing is like, who's to say like that's not coming back like that karma, you know what I mean? And that's not that's why you guys like maybe are so successful, is because you guys are putting such a heavy weight on like giving back to the community. And I believe in like subconscious and like how things work, and like, you know what I mean, like we always talk about that, right?
Yeah, manifestation, what you give is what you get. It's like if you put that energy out, I tell him all the time, sometimes I'll just like talking to this guy and kind of like project these ideas that I have. Next thing I know, next week it's happening, and I'm like, like I started kind of realizing I got to be more safe with what I ask for, because it's like the world will give it to you as long as you give to it, right? Yeah. So kind of that idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I was gonna say, if maybe you guys can highlight like what has been one of the biggest success stories in real estate, and what has on the opposite end been a nightmare. Like just give one and one.
Okay. There we go.
I would say like our biggest like nightmare was like when we were managing ourselves and we had really bad tenants. Like our first experience, and like it was with a joint venture, so like it was our job to manage it and to like deal with it all. And there was like guns and drugs and jail and restraining orders and all that stuff. So like that was probably our biggest like kind of shit show.
Yeah.
Right?
In Chatham, yeah.
Yeah, it was actually funny, Andrew, somebody who ended up working for us for a bit, he was a linesman at the time, and he was working on a line, and like right down the street from this property, and you know, he's hearing all these cop cars, so he pulls his phone out, and then like we come behind the cop cars, and you know, the cops like, what do you want to do? The door's locked. Then like, let's break it down, because then when you guys come like, you know, tonight to like, because you guys come here all the time, and you don't need to knock at the front door. The front door's just not there. Yeah. And then, you know, they went up, and then they, because
they can't just break in without
unless
a
you guys tell them to,
anything,
right?
Yeah. And it was crazy. You know, there was like, you know, bikes everywhere. There was like,
Really?
you know, the one tenant's like profile picture was him with like what I think was like an AK-47 or something.
Yeah, that's heavy.
I think, like,
does that fall back on you guys at all in any way? Because
no,
it's your house, but like you have them as tenants.
I mean, maybe, but these tenants aren't they're not the type of people to say like, hey, police, this guy just did this to me. Like,
they're well known.
They don't.
Yeah.
Like the cop, like they know them very. Like when you call, like we would call like the non-911 number. Like there was like,
you got the private number, really.
Yeah, and they would say like, who's your tenant? It's Chatham, right? So there's like in the main city, there's like 50,000 people. There's maybe only 200 people that cops like are always communicating with, maybe. Yeah. So they know them all by name.
And you had one of the 200.
We had two of the 200.
The same building. They hated each other.
So our one tenant, it was funny because when they arrested the one tenant, and he was like, oh man, I arrested you the other night. Like I told you that. And so I was talking to the cop. I said, what happened? He said he was in Blenheim the other night, and he was hopping all these fences, stealing all the neighbors' like weed plants. And he ended up having just this huge bag of weed plants. You know, he couldn't have been smart and taken like 5, because that's probably all he actually needed.
Yeah,
he had to take like 50 of them. And he said, you know, I got there, and these neighbors, like these in a very nice subdivision, were just beating this guy up because they stole all his, like, they pulled like these pot plants that these poor guys were probably working on for months, trying to just keep alive.
Oh yeah, that news article was so funny. Chatham's like notorious for sharing like police briefs, so and like they share names and everything. They're like kind of savage.
Filter.
Yeah, and it was like tenant was detained by neighbors. So like the neighbors like kept him there until the police came.
Did they put the address too? Like you guys ever see your guys'
Oh
address?
Yeah, we would. I used to search when we used to manage ourselves. I would go like on the Chatham Police website and like search our street names, and like we had tenants. Our first tenants we ever placed, she was selling meth, and the last tenant Jeremy placed was also selling meth.
Yeah, so I put a teacher into one of our units, which you think
is this the Facebook one? This is the Facebook one you posted recently?
You thought, wow, I put a teacher and I hit the gold mine here. This guy's always paying. There's a single family house. Yeah. I was like, this guy's gonna live in here for like 15 years. It's gonna be great. Never gonna raise his rent. He's gonna be perfect. Stops paying a month in, and then luckily he gave me his principal's like as his reference, and I talked to his principal. So months went on, and I said to him finally, I said, hey man, you know, I'm really, really concerned about you. I said, I feel like I should just call your principal and just kind of see what's going on. You know, you haven't paid rent, or I haven't, you know, communicated with you. I got like an e-transfer like 2 minutes later, like with all the money. So I was like, wow, that worked. And then 6 or 8 months went by, he didn't pay again. And then I said to my property manager, I said, hey Sarah, let's go down there and let's just do a walkthrough of the unit, because we knew we were going to get an eviction soon. And we went there, and the door was open in the back. So then we walked in, and we were talking to the neighbors, and he said, yeah, like he got arrested for like cooking meth like the other day. And so I called Taylor, and Taylor said, "Yeah, I'm looking at it on Google right now. It definitely happened."
Story checked out.
He got pulled over for having a license that he was driving without a license. So he got pulled over, and then he got caught with all his drugs.
And and he's teaching someone's kids.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not
He's
anymore.
Teach
Not
what?
anymore.
Teach how to cook meth?
No, but
Yeah.
like that's rowdy.
It's-
That's
and I
think-
rowdy.
I think our biggest success was probably one of the 12 plexes we bought this year. It was one that I was going after for like a very long time. A good friend a buddy of mine, Ben, it was his 12 plex, and I really wanted this thing, and I was always after him. And it was New Year's Eve. We were having Christmas. No, it was New Year's Eve. We were having this party at our house, and everyone's partying or whatever. I'm like on the computer, like, he's like, we agreed on this price, and then I sent it, and then we like, oh, I want this changed. So I was going back and forth on New Year's Eve, and then so we got that one. We managed to buy it, and what was cool about that is we financed it like 100% with like other people's money. It was close to like a $2 million building. So at the time it was to me it was like the coolest thing ever, because it was our first big building that we had like kind of bought and found off market.
All by ourselves, yeah.
All by ourselves, yeah, too. Like no partners, anything like that. And what was cool is we had the 8 units in there that were already vacant, or 7, sorry. And then I was able to get one more person to agree to leave, and we just got another vacancy in it now. And then we'll have another one by the end of the year, just from a tenant like not paying, that we bought the building and she wasn't paying.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one there will be like 10 of 12, completely turned over. It's like really high-end finishes, like really nice building.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, and like I think the execution was the coolest, because it was the 8 units in like 10-11 weeks.
Damn.
Like it was crazy. Like there were so many people working there, and there was just like a lot. Like I remember our private lenders like, Jeremy, I want to come down like every week, because it was the biggest mortgage he's ever done, like certainly the biggest mortgage we've ever done, and it was incredibly risky. Like,
so how much interest are you paying a month on that?
Yeah, it was 15.
so that was $15,000 a month.
Yeah.
Damn.
But not to mention, once you're done the renovations on that building, you can't just go to TD and they just slap a new mortgage on it. Like it's a lot of money, so there's a lot of due diligence that gets put into it. So we ended up having to hold it. We were done in about 3.5 months, but it took us 6 months total just to like refinance it, or like 2.5 months after the 3.5.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was definitely close to like a $400,000 like renovation.
Yeah.
Plus another like $150,000 in interest payments, and then we had to put $150,000 down. So like for us, we were very far stretched. And of course, we bought this in January when all anybody could think about is real estate going like straight up.
Yeah.
And by the time we were done the project and refinanced it in July, rates went from 2.75 to like 5.5%.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, yeah, your building's worth X amount, but we can only give you a mortgage of this amount, because now interest rates, like, they don't cover that, right?
Yeah.
You all of a sudden have 3% extra interest on $2 million. It's a lot of money per year.
Oh, yeah.
$60,000 a year in extra interest payments, right? So then the issue became, now, right? So we had a $1.8 million loan on the building, and we bring it to Libro, who's the bank that we deal with, and Libro says, okay, we'll do this, but we're going to give you a $1.5 million loan. So now what that looks like is, just to refinance this building, I got to come up with another $300,000 just to refinance this thing. Jeez. After spending $600,000-$700,000 to do it. And so that was pretty stressful, and shout out to our mortgage broker Josh. He was able to get it done. We were able to like just get a loan for the amount we needed, which was cool. Interest only loan, which really helped kind of weather out the storm. But that was, I would say, like, our biggest.
That's crazy. And then another big thing is, like, you guys started the Chatham real estate meetup, right?
Yeah.
Like, you two started the whole meetup there.
And Mike is part of it. We'll give him
Oh,
some.
how important was that for you to have a meetup in the city that you're investing in? Because I know I've heard you in podcasts say like I'm niche down. You know what I mean? Like I know everything about Chatham. I don't have to look at any comps. I know if it's a deal or not. Like how important was it for you to have investors like meet up?
Yeah, well, Taylor and I, we were kind of talking about this earlier. You know, like even if you like drive through a small town, you're like, oh, like why isn't there like this here or whatever, right? And it's the reason why is because someone hasn't started it, and maybe like you're like. For us with the Chatham meetup is, I want it to be, like, we always want it to be, like, the Chatham people. When people think Chatham, want you to think Jeremy or Taylor.
Yeah.
Because naturally we would get more deals that way and all of that. And it was a lot easier, to go to a lender and say, hey, do you want to lend us money? We're very niche down. Like, we only do the same thing every single time. We're not doing developments. We're not flipping. We've never flipped a house before. Like, we've never actually went in, fixed it up. Like we specialize in buying rundown properties, turning them over, refinancing them, and continuing that process. So stick to one thing, and we just wanted to build out our network, right? So
yeah, and that's crazy because like I feel like a lot of people like they get that shiny object syndrome or whatever, right? Like a lot of people like even I feel like invested in Florida, and then look what happened with Hurricane Ian, right? Like it's like those guys are probably like dealing with a lot of insurance claims, right? So it's like I love the fact that you guys are very niche down and you guys are focused on your one thing. And I think you said this too. You're like it's kind of boring what we do, but it's working. And when I do stuff that I'm super excited about, I don't make as much money as when I'm doing the boring stuff. Right? Yeah. So that's a super interesting.
So you figured it out, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And go ahead.
No, I just had the question about so it would kind of go back into this because Instagram questions, we did like kind of promote that you guys were going to be on it. So we had a question from someone who asked, like, I guess it's a lot of people or maybe it's just people there. If you have bad credit, no down payment, what would you recommend to someone like that?
I think finding a partner that has what you're looking for, right?
The leverage, right?
Good credit, leverage there. Don't be afraid to give up, half the whatever.
And if like let's say like playing devil's advocate, like let's say they're like, oh, I don't have any experience. How am I supposed to get a partner? You know what I mean? Like, what would you say to that?
So maybe educating yourself so that you can explain it. So for me, like I could probably convince most people to like invest with us, and the reason why is I have the education behind me to I can officially explain something of how a deal works. You guys might understand how a deal works, but when you try to explain it to somebody, it might be very confusing, right? Whereas when we talk to people understand it. So be understanding more about what you're trying to actually execute and being able to better explain it to somebody would probably be where I would be at, right? Like if they don't have the education behind them, there isn't a reason why somebody should invest with them. But if they do understand what they're doing and they've put in the time to understand it, well, now they have a better chance.
Okay. So build your credibility almost in a way, right? Okay. Another one that we had is like, okay, let's say you have minimal down payment, you have a good credit, you have a steady income. What would be your first recommendation for someone to do?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a big down payment, going to banks, trying to get lines of credit, trying to think about like what is the thing you do and how can you leverage that maybe after work. Can you work longer hours? Can you work longer hours at work? Like, there's a lot of things you can do. Maybe you have to get paid like straight time, but you still work more hours. Like, there's you just need to make more money, right?
Yeah.
There's only so much you can save, but there's an infinite amount of how much you can make.
Yeah.
And so for like what Taylor and I did a lot of times was we just looked at how much we make per week and what are our expenses. What's the maximum amount of money we can save and just maximize it.
We also like worked hard, right? Like we worked all through university. I had 3 jobs every summer. We both became McDonald's managers. Like you have to have a strong work ethic and have the want to do it, right?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, they want to do it, but when it comes to like, okay, this is the work you have to do, it's like, I want to do it another way. Quick money.
Yeah. Nobody wants to. Well, I think we talked about last podcast is no one wants to work anymore. It's everybody wants the results without the work, without the effort.
I saw a saying online, and it was somebody saying, and it was somebody asking like, how do I get like fit, basically like super easy, and then the guy in the podcast is like, why does it have to be easy? Like, why does getting fit have to be easy? Why can't it be hard, right? And it's not going to be easy at the beginning because again, it's just something you've never done before, so it seems difficult. But again, like eventually it becomes boring and easy.
And what a lot of people don't realize is like it's not always fun either. You know what I mean? Like, it's like some late nights, or like, you know, you keep on grinding. Like there's some down days, you know what I mean, when you're really down on yourself, and but you gotta keep on pushing and persevering. It's not for everybody, you know. Like you guys said earlier, like if you're happy with your 9 to 5 and you're happy with like your life, amazing. Like we all aim to, like, you know, like be satisfied with how we're living, right? So yeah. That's crazy.
Fire, man.
So yeah, I guess we could probably. I have one more question. Sorry. So everyone's like, okay, we're about to.
Remember what Mr. B said?
Yeah. So look, honestly, I have one more question. What is your overall thought on where the market is gonna be going? I know it's like no one has a crystal ball, but like based off your experience.
Yeah, people always say like follow the institutional money. You know, like institutions aren't buying. You know, like REITs aren't buying apartment buildings right now, or at least they've slowed down. Like that's where like banks and institutions are like where majority of the money is, right? It's not from people like us. So you want to look at like where they're putting their money and how they're kind of adjusting to these times. I think the consensus is a lot of people are getting like shrunk right now, like with, you know, how much, you know, all of a sudden it went from 2.5% to 5.5%. So that really shrinks people's buying power. I have like a lot of, I would consider like wealthy friends who are like dramatically reducing their the money they're spending monthly. So if people like that are doing you know, reducing their monthly spend, like what are people that are already paycheck to paycheck doing? Right? So, you know, if there is the saying, you know, be greedy when others are fearful. I think the way Taylor and I are approaching these coming times are, let's be safe and you know, be very conscious about the decisions we're making, because it's very easy to go under. I know like 4 or 5 people that had, you know, a lot of, you know, real estate who have like just like literally gone under.
Jeez.
Right?
Yeah.
Like in the last like year. So for us, like we don't want to be those people.
Yeah.
I would rather miss out on opportunities. Right? No, I don't want to go crazy, or we don't want to go crazy in the next year or two. I'd rather miss out on opportunities and just know like I'm comfortable. Again, back to like happiness. Like are we happy? We're happy. What's the point of stressing ourselves out to a point of potential like collapse, right? Like we've kind of done what we want to, and now we're just kind of like steadily going at it. So
cool. Yeah, so I guess we could wrap it up there. Unless you have another question, Coco.
Well, I did. No, it was like just going off of that. It's just all I did kind of wanted to ask is like, because you guys did make I guess a goal of like 200 units by the end of December of 2023. Is that going to happen at this point, you think?
This is Jeremy speaking.
It likely, I don't see that happening.
But wait, what was it, by 2023?
Yeah, December of 2023 was the thing. And
So
I just
there's
asked because like you said, you're downsizing, right? So it's like now you're kind of just adapting with the times, which is kind of amazing to hear, right? Because like now you're just formulating a new plan, right? It's not that it's never going to happen, but it's like maybe, as you said, you're kind of going to more cash positive, where it's where I need to be safe in this, because like I think you guys probably had that approach because we've seen it just going up, right? And now it's going down. It's like, okay, we got to rehash our plan, right?
I think
that's correct.
One thing that I always try and say to myself is like, you know, it's really important to create goals, and I think almost more important to create to scratch existing goals and create new ones when times are changing. Like I don't see having 200 units. I never even know how many units we have, because I'm at the point where like I don't care. And not because we have so many where it's like, screw it, you know, like we're like top of the world. It's because like I always like, do we have enough money coming in to make ourselves happy? If the answer is yes, like that's how much money I want to make. I don't want to make, we do not strive to be like, let's make $1 million this month. Like we aren't those types of people. And if we ever did have a goal like that, it would probably be like, let's try and make so much money this month and donate like 90% of it. Like we would do something like that, but it's never like, let's make us so much money so we can like, for what, to buy a bigger box. Like we're not flashy. We've got the house we want. Like we're just trying to be like comfortable at this point.
I would say like our goals change quite often. Like our definitely our business coach would laugh. Like even our plans change quite often. But like goals definitely like we're reviewing them weekly. Quarterly, you're like, okay, are we still doing this the next quarter? Or like, how are our goals changing? Like, we're already thinking like, okay, what are we going to make for our goals next year? Yeah. And like, I would say in terms of like buying real estate, like we know we want to continue buying real estate, but like, I wouldn't say our main goal anymore is like, how many units do we want? It's totally different.
Yeah, it's okay. That's awesome.
Cool. Well, yeah, like honestly, thank you guys both so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to sit down with Coca and I.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was great. Do you guys want to say anything else to
plugins,
like,
anything?
Any plugins or anything?
Yeah,
like that?
just take action. If you have a goal, go after it. I think a lot of times people, in your inner circle right now are maybe going to be doubting you, but there's a lot of people out there that like are cheering for you, and though just surround yourself with people like that.
That's sweet. Make sure you follow TayJay Real Estate, everyone, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.
All right. Peace.